بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم, brother Yasser AL-Maawali.
وعليكم السلام.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
For those who don't know brother Yasser is a deputy CFO in one of the reputed Islamic banks in Oman. Welcome to the show, brother Yasser, and I'm very honored to have you on to discuss a very important aspect of our lives.
Pleasure being here with you.
Now, brother Yasser, we're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about financial literacy, and the first thing I want to ask you is how important it is for a person to be financially literate.
First of all, thank you for hosting me, Brother Hatim. Financial literacy is a very important topic. It's been discussed globe-wise in the US, Great Britain, and Singapore, and India. India have knew the importance of financial literacy. And they knew that the root cause of poverty and the business failures is due to the financial management. So we are talking about a topic that's really important globe-wise, and we believe that this topic needs to be spread when we have the obligation to educate the people on this topic itself.
And even locally, Brother Yasser, do you feel that young people or graduates or people who are starting their own businesses like SMEs, are they financial literate enough to, to understand what is going on?
To be honest, Brother Hatim, we don't have an analysis that proves that here locally at the moment. However, we believe that one of the main issues of financial literacy in the community that we face right now is many of Omanis, they who are earning income, either monthly income, fixed income through their salaries, or the ones who are started their business to raise their income independently,
yes,
do lack in some instances of financial literacy, like how to manage the cash flows, the monthly cash flows, how to construct their own budget, and how to execute upon that. So we believe that this issue is already there. That we are talking about something in two different areas right now, talking about individuals and business companies who are just started. Now, if we segregate these two, it's very important to segregate these two. Why? Because we're going to tackle each point independently. Now, we look at the individuals who are earning their salaries. First of all, these salaries is an income, right? And it's a resultant from what exactly? It's resultant from education background, or maybe from experience. So we need to understand that companies and organizations do value these kind of things, like
yes,
education background and their experiences. So the law of comparative advantage. So the law of comparative advantage plays a big role here. So what does it mean? It means like what differentiates you from others. What makes you better than
what
that?
advantage do you have over others?
What advantages you have over others. So this is very important topic. So these advantages can be in skills, in educations, okay, and in experience that will result in add value to that organization. Such organizations will value these kind of skills as they already know that it adds value to that organization, so they will repay accordingly. So the moment you believe in yourself and you have all these skills that potential organization as well, do recognize, you will be gradually building that income over the time.
Now, Brother Yasser, you see, throughout the past period, it was important first to establish literacy in terms of reading and writing, and that was the main objective of the government in the 70s and 80s. And then you have technological literacy, where you have modern advancements, technological advancement. Every single day something new comes up, so people need to be up to date. What happens to the financial literacy? Why isn't there enough maybe support or educational programs to boost literacy within the community? Or is there initiatives that we don't know about?
To be honest, there's a lack of initiatives, as you mentioned, and that's true. It's not only here locally in Oman, it's everywhere across the globe. That's why when I just talk to you about this the raise in financial literacy and educating of people in the US and Great Britain and Singapore and India, that shows that there's a lack of lack of informing people from the students level up till the grown up level.
Yes.
So there's a lack of issue there, and we believe that education is not mandated by schools or universities. We also have an obligations, me and you and others and family members, to educate people from time to time through these podcasts that we're doing right now. It can be through LinkedIn, it can be from Twitters, from YouTube, independent channels, from TVs as well. We keep on educating the people. Sometimes, by the way, Brother Hatim, it seems to be basics. These
Yes.
can be considered to be basic stuff. Like, what does it mean you have an income? You want to spread that income. Everybody knows that. But literally, to be honest, it's not being practiced properly.
And I think, Brother Yasser, if you look at the past, our ancestors, they were businessmen. And some of them, they were not even literate. They could not read or write. They've never been to a school, but they were very well informed on how to run their businesses, and they were successful businessmen. So it was through practice. Maybe we should involve our kids more in our financial affairs so that we bring them up to that, at least the minimum level of literacy. So I give an example. Sometimes you go, dining in one of the restaurants with your kids. It's always beneficial for you when the bill comes to, present it to your kids and ask them if they can understand what is on the bill.
Okay.
Because one day they will have to pay their own bills. Sometimes you give them an allowance every month. So you want them to learn how to manage funds. You have 30 days, you have 40 riyals per month. How do you manage between whatever you want to eat during the weekend, where do you want to go, the toys you want to buy, everything within this budget.
Absolutely.
So I think we as parents as well, we can play that role to educate our kids to be more literate, more literate. But overall, in the scale of a country or the scale of startups, how can the banking sector, for example, support in that way?
To be honest, when you talk about banking sector is it's a different aspect completely. So maybe we'll talk about it later as we go forward, because banking sector is a financial intermediate that connects borrowers and depositors. So it's
Yes.
completely a different aspect. They don't take the responsibility to educate to that extent. That's something different. But we as a people, as individuals, we need to lead that. And also schools, they can start that as well. And also universities as well. They can, because these concepts of financial literacy is not being taught across, throughout all our education history that
Yes.
we've gone through. So there's a lack of knowledge there, but that's why we are addressing it here. Like when you look at the income, for example, you need to segregate that too. Like there's a rule, 50, 30, 20. 50 on your fixed costs, 30 on your savings, and then 20 you leave it for your entertainment. You can always, that individual can always, change that, the ratio, breakdown ratios of that income, depending on his situation. Now, the situation might be like the fixed cost might be higher slightly, the saving can be higher slightly, and the entertainment could be lower, and so on. That's a manageable thing. So every individual person can manage that independently.
Basically, plan your finances.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've seen some financial trainers who train people to have like Excel sheet where you have your expenses, your fixed expenses, your variable expenses, your entertainment, your saving, your
Absolutely.
emergency fund, and so on. So these type of trainings, I think they are helping the community and society to educate themselves in
Yes.
terms of financial literacy.
Yes, Brother Hatim. And just I'll add upon that as well. If there's something that I can educate the people today is how to construct their own budget, how they can construct their own budget and how to plan and how to set goals for the future. That's very important that they need to know from now and take it forward and also educate the kids for as well.
Do you think people normally set budgets for things, or they just do it randomly?
I think they do it randomly. That's my belief. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But But obviously, it should be done. I believe it should be done, not on the corporate level perspective or the company perspective.
What
But
will be the outcome if you do it properly?
to be honest, you'll be more cautious on spending, and you will know exactly where the spending is going. Where you're chipping your income, and where does it go exactly? Does it go really on a real generating asset? Are you, you're building an asset? Are you paying a genuine expense, or is it just an expense that you don't need? So you'll be able to differentiate what your needs and what your wants when you do that exercise.
Um, Now that this is out of the way, I would like to know more about the banking system, because the banking system is a vital role in our society today, and wherever you go, the banking system is present.
Absolutely.
But it's also important to understand what is the banking system, what is the role of the banking system, how do we connect with the banking system, what are the requirements, and so on. So the floor is yours.
Done. Okay, now the banking system, it works on a concept called fractional reserve banking. What does it mean? It means like banks accept the deposits and retains for a certain fraction of those deposits, and the remainder it gets lended outside the bank.
Yes.
So that's how the system of the banks really works. And who mandates those reserve is the central bank.
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is how the banking system works. Now, banking as a banking service, it serves retail, it serves corporates, that's SME, it can do investments, it can give advisory, it can work on acquisition, it can give advice on acquisition and mergers, it can do financial management, it can build the treasury management for the companies. So it does tons of services that it can do. But mostly the people will understand that it just gives loans and takes deposits. That's the normal
Yeah,
concept.
that's the general understanding
general
that your salary or your pay check goes to the bank, and at the end of the month you withdraw the amount,
Yes.
and if you want a loan to buy a car or a house, that's about it.
Absolutely.
But you have elaborated very well that there are so many other functions and services
Yes.
that are being provided by the banking sector, and because maybe the general public, they don't need these services.
Maybe.
That's why they don't know about it. But I'm sure companies and industries who are utilizing these services, they know about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not only that, people need to, they already know that the only place where they can store their money safely is the banks currently.
So you don't put it under the pillow like the olden days?
No, I don't think so. That's happening right now. But majority of the people are already storing their money with the banks.
Yes.
And because that's the place of security that they believe that they need to do. But they need to understand which account they need to open, because this also elaborates on the financial literacy again. Which account do you want to open? Is it a
Yeah,
current account?
sometimes it's a bit tricky, because they ask you, do you want a saving account? Do you want a current account?
Yes.
Do you want a call account? Do you want a fixed deposit account? So maybe if you elaborate a little bit on the differences of these
There's
accounts.
a big difference of these accounts. First of all, when you talk about current and saving and call, these are open maturity, meaning that you can withdraw those funds at any time you need those funds.
The three types.
The three types.
Okay.
And the difference between them as well, it's like call deposits. That means you can generate a return out of that deposit, because they give you an interest rate or profit rate depending if it's an
So
Islamic bank.
those are the ones that do the fixed deposits.
No, the fixed deposit is a completely different
different.
dimension. The fixed deposit is you have a start date and a maturity date.
Yes.
So it's a type of investment that you have a specific amount of money that you want to keep it aside for an investment, and there'll be a return out of this fixed deposit investment.
So the call account is different.
Call account is different, and saving account is a bit different as well. Saving account has a minimal profit rate. Call account will be higher, and also maybe some of the banks will ask you to, they will cap this call deposit because it's not a favorite deposit for the banks anyway. So they'll cap deposit for a specific amount. Like if you, let's say just give it an example, let's say 1,000 and above, you can start on call account. But saving account is open for everyone, Everyone can open the saving accounts regardless what kind of amount or minimum amount it's there.
What about current account?
Current account is generally used for, it doesn't, you don't generate an income out of the current account, but you are able to open checks. You can get a checkbook out of this current accounts, and you can get a checkbook from this current account, and you can utilize these checks as well.
And in terms of the two, the saving and the current, of course, there are charges and services to be paid, right?
Yeah, every bank will have different
Their
services.
own,
Yeah, their own services, and that every bank would definitely will have it in their website. This they call it tariff charges that they'll be publishing it in their websites.
Now, you mentioned something very important, that the banking system is regulated by the central bank.
Right.
And the central bank is an important pillar in the banking system.
Right.
Yeah, it is the regulatory body, and it is there in all countries. So, what are the main roles of the central bank?
Okay. Central bank is an independent institution authorized by the government to monitor to monitor the banks and supervise and oversees the bank, and also to oversee the monetary policy of the country, stabilize the currency as well, the inflation, the unemployment. So central bank role is to supervise and to ensure that the regulatory capital are in good shapes, and to ensure that the banks don't go to ensure that to avoid depression. And also central bank role is to ensure the stability of the economy as a whole.
So, on an individual basis, what should an individual know about the central bank? So, what are like the things that, because sometimes I give an example, if you have checks that bounce, and then you hear that you're blocked from the central bank. So, this is like the authority of the central bank goes further than the bank, it goes to the individual as well.
Absolutely.
So what are the things that an individual should know about the central bank so that they are at least on the safe side?
No, see, these certain, I would say, crimes, it's a bounce check is considered to be a crime by law globally and also locally. So central bank gives these rulings to the banks as well, to mandate and to ensure that these things have been in practice, and to ensure the stability. This also ensures the stability of the economy, because bounce checks, that means you are defaulting for something.
Yeah.
So there's a beneficiary here, and there's also a person who is getting, losing his money because of this bounce check as well. So it's a very important thing. But what individuals needs to do about central bank, there's no big connection. There's no connection between central banks and the public. That's for sure. Central banks is not involved with the public, but it's involved in supervising the banks. So the individual only needs to know what is central bank role as an information.
Yes.
Because they really play a big role in the stability of the economy. Central bank also issue monthly bulletins or quarterly bulletins, which has financial information, financial indicators as well. They can read about these kind of things. Inflation rates, all these things are there in these info there. So every person today in Oman will have to know what is the inflation rates currently exist.
Yeah.
Okay. And they need to ensure that where they're placing those funds as well. If they have any money or savings, where they're placing those funds. Does it really generate an income for them or not?
Now, in terms of rates on the loans and so on, does the central bank also regulate that? It means it can regulate that what bank can charge and what they can, if they have a cap on charging the interest rate.
In terms of capping, central banks has capped the retail lending rate to 6%, and that is due to this to ensure that the stable of the that to ensure that the people in the local country, they don't get affected by the interest rates hikes. As you are aware, Brother Hatim, there's U.S. Federal Reserve have raised lots of rates hikes across the years, the past years.
Yes.
So Central Bank of Oman as well also raises the hikes here internally, locally in Oman, which also affects the rise. It will have an effect on the rise of the cost of funds as well in the banking system. So eventually, based on normal economic system, what will happen if there is a rise in the cost of funds, there'll be a rise also in the financing of and the loans taken, interest rates on loans. So this effect currently is not affecting the retail, the individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But however, I don't know. But so far, the central bank is relying on this topic. But who knows? Maybe it's going to change. So people need to be aware of these kind of consequences that might affect them in the future as well.
One of the things that is maybe a concern for the individual is when you sign the contract of the loan, a specific rate is agreed upon. And then you have inflation and you have other aspects that are regulating the entire world, the financial world, and these rates might change. And that causes a concern, going back to the idea of financial literacy of an individual, not knowing these aspects, not understanding these aspects. They become frustrated, they become,
Absolutely.
Unstable, and so on. So this is a concern.
It is.
How is the banking system, trying maybe to even to educate people before they commit to themselves to such a thing?
That's why when we discuss about financial literacy, we need to educate people, and people need to be educated by themselves, to be honest, at the first place. And they are pretty much in advance now at the moment.
Yes.
We can see that across the banking system. The customers are pretty much aware what exactly action they're taking. See, Brother Hatim, every action has a financial implication.
Yes.
So today, every individual knows what exactly they earn. It's a fixed earning that they have. So then they don't have to go overburden. And whatever they sign as a contract today, it needs to be checked. Is it a fixed interest rate? Is it a variable interest rate? What is affecting this interest rate going forward? Should I take a long-term debt? Should I take a short-term debt? All these factors needs to be considered at the time of taking this decision. Let's give an example, because this is a very important topic. When you talk about debts, there's two types of debts.
Yes.
Consuming debts and debts based on assets. These are completely two different dimensions. The debts on consumable items, they vanish. They don't have a value. Like today, you take a debt for travel. You're going just to travel and coming back. It vanishes. It doesn't have a value, but the debt exists. So should I take it long term or should I take it short term?
Yeah. Short term.
Short term is better.
Short term.
That's the worst thing that you can do if you want to take a debt. But you shouldn't take it a long term, because that will affect you in the future. If you're buying an asset, now you need to take it long term. But how long do you need to take it? Let's say you have an asset that you want to buy. You can take it for 10 years, 5 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. It's up to you.
This brings us to the decision of both the banking industry and the individual, because you have a cap over deduction.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you can choose, I want the maximum deduction because to minimize the number of years, or I want to take it easy. I want to go for 20 years and have the minimum deduction. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes. See, central bank also regulates this part as well. They want to ensure that the customers also, they are not overloaded with debts. So they give a caps to all the banks that this is the minimum cap, and you can go, let's say 60%. So the customer shouldn't go above 60% if they're taking a housing finance or housing loan. So the customer, when they approach the bank, they have two options. First of all, it depends on the value of that asset.
Yes.
How expensive it is. Is it luxurious? Is it normal? So depending on the income of that individual, he needs to take a very wise decision, because the decision that he takes at that moment will affect him for the next 20 years or 10 years, whatever it is. It's a very long term.
So don't go beyond your means.
Don't go beyond your means.
Yeah.
So just look at your earning income, analyze yourself, and see where you fit. So you can buy, you don't have to go for a luxurious thing.
The reason why I'm saying this is most of the time people go beyond their means, and we spoke about budgeting it,
Yes.
and they end up paying for 20 years a hectic installment where they cannot bear because they can't make the ends meet. They only thought of that moment of having the house or the car or the holiday, but they didn't think of the financial implication
Absolutely.
of that. So, inshallah, we'll take a short break. And after that, we're going to talk about a very important thing, which is the Islamic banking. Inshallah. Welcome back, Brother Yasser AL-Maawali. Thank you again for accepting our invitation to be on the show. Now, I want to ask you about a very critical aspect, which is the Islamic banking. As we know that it's not very long since we started the Islamic banking system in the Sultanate of Oman.
Right.
So let us talk from the beginning. Why did we start the Islamic banking, and when did we start?
So before even Oman, let us see how Islamic banking really started. We just discussed about the banking system and how does it work and so on. The fundamental issue of Islam economy, what they call the Islam finance, is loan is not a type of financing. That's the main issue, the fundamental issue. The Islamic finance and Islamic scholars believe that loan cannot generate interest. Whenever you give a person a loan, there's no benefit of that. It's just a loan. Yes. So let's say today you're lending someone 5,000 riyals. You expect to get those 5,000 riyals as it is.
Yes.
Regardless the inflation rate rises, whatever it is.
That's the understanding that everybody understands.
That's the understanding everybody knows.
Yes.
Now, that is mainly the fundamental issue of the scholars. So they said, this is not acceptable. So it started where in 1970s, where there was a movement across the economists who are believing the Islamic system to start an Islamic bank that doesn't work on what we mentioned about fractional reserve banking only, but it also involved the customers as partners of the bank, and as well the lenders will be partners of the bank. And how does it work? And I'll explain. It basically works on contractual basis. Yes. Meaning, like you have today a customer who wants to approach you as an Islamic bank, and he wants to open an account. So you'll ask this customer, you want us to give us a qard hasan, or you want to participate with us as a bank and make profits? So it depends on the customer what exactly he wants. But let's say he...
Can you explain what is a qard hasan?
Qard hasan actually is loan free of interest. Qard hasan is a loan free of interest.
So the bank is asking you, do you want to take this loan, or do you want to give this loan?
Yeah, so banks actually, when the customer comes and stores his funds with the bank,
yes,
banks believe that money doesn't belong to the bank.
Yes.
However, banks takes the permission from the customer to operate on that funds, on the customer acceptance.
Yes.
And customer will not expect to receive and return out of that qard hasan. Okay.
So he will allow the bank to utilize the fund,
yes,
to generate income.
Absolutely.
But he will not wait a return from them.
Or else he has a choice as well. He can open a saving account on a mudaraba basis. That's a contractual term that's been used, where he can, invest in that, save it with that saving account with the bank. So the bank utilizes that funds and share the profits that it generates from the financing with the customer.
Now, let us go to the individual on the street, someone who is a normal person, not really financially literate, and he looks at what is offered in the conventional banking and what is offered in the Islamic banking, and he see a somehow identical transaction.
Right.
Is that true? It is identical, or
no?
There is other aspects.
See, we follow our scholars. What scholars say, both you have two options. Now, there are two options right now on the
Yes.
table. Yeah, you have this individual that you just talked about. He has an option to open a conventional account, or he has an option to open an Islamic bank account. It's completely up to him. But the scholar said that you have an option that may be, which is an Islamic bank. You have that option, which may be not a perfect option, but you should open with that Islamic bank account. That's what scholar says.
Hmm.
And I'm not here to protect the scholars, or I'm just here a biased person. I'm
Yes.
just delivering what exactly they're saying. So this is exactly what they're saying. In both angles, when you look at them both independently, they
Yes.
seem to be the same. Like today, you go with an open an account with a saving account with a conventional bank. You sign an agreement on that saving account.
Yes.
At the end of the month, you'll receive an interest rate, and you relax at home. That's it. So you already have a saving account, and you have the interest thing.
Yeah.
Similarly, when you go to Islamic bank, they will tell you this is a mudaraba contract, where you invest with us, and you earn maybe it could be the same return that you're earning in the conventional bank on liability part.
Now, the thing is, when you speak to the public, they say the difference is in the namings, but the transaction is almost the same.
Mm.
Now, we need to educate the public on the differences so that they understand,
Yes.
yeah, why is it okay, or is it an option to go through the Islamic window, and it might not be suitable to go through the other route because it's forbidden for Muslims.
Yeah, again, I'll be referring to the scholars all the time because
Yeah.
exactly this is what the scholars said. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, there's a fundamental issue between the conventional Islamic, which is the agreements
Yes.
that's its place. So the fundamental issue is today, Brother Hatim, if this individual open an account in a conventional bank, he will receive a money out of money. And that fundamentally, with Sharia law, which Islamic banks is based on,
Yes.
is forbidden. This is what the scholars said. But else, when you open an Islamic bank account, the form or the agreement that you're filling with the bank is completely different. It's based on mudaraba basis, okay? And the bank will invest that money in a pool, and they will generate an income, and that income will be shared. So it's based on risk sharing and return sharing.
Is there a possibility of you to lose that in that investment?
See, at the moment, locally in Oman, this is not in practice. None of those customers have lost, ideally because those banks are generating income as well. When I talk about banks here, Islamic banks, full-fledged Islamic banks and Islamic windows as well. So both are generating pure income. But will they lose? Will they not? This is completely on the bank's hands.
Yeah, because if I'm a partner, then I'm a partner in profit, and I'm a partner also in the loss.
Yes.
Isn't it?
This is one of the questions that were raised during a seminar on Islamic banks, which was in Bahrain, where the Islamic banks prefers to not to let the customers lose, and they come up with an approach which an SSB member, SSB is a Sharia supervisory board within the banks, Islamic banks.
Yes.
They give a fatwa that the bank can donate their profits for these customers not to lose. Why is that, Brother Hatim? Islamic banking system compared to the conventional bank system is very low.
Yes.
Because even the amount, if you look at the amount, maybe it will seem a huge number of amounts, a number of assets or liabilities that are there within Islamic banks, but it's comparative to the conventional banks, they are really low. So what Islamic scholars says that we can continue with the space as we speak, in order to ensure the stability of the Islamic banks and the sustainability of these Islamic banks, in order they don't lose track. Because the moment you start this exercise, maybe the Islamic banks will lose customers as well.
Now, I will be neutral today, and I will be, carrying the concerns of the public in terms of understanding more about this.
Absolutely.
So, if you see at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the establishment of banks was not there. And now you have the Islamic banks. Now, the questions to be posed is, how is it considered to be an Islamic system of banking while there wasn't an Islamic system of banking in the past?
I'll be neutral with you because
Yes.
I'm neutral with you as well, as I'm just delivering what exactly I understood and what I learned. See, what happened is when I talked about how these Islamic banks started in 1970s, it started from that root cause. They believe that the conventional bank system does not serve them as Muslims.
Yes.
There's particular elements that are missed, and these pillars are very important for the Islamic and the Muslim in the Muslim Islamic world and the Muslim as well, like forbidden like the sin of riba,
Yes.
and also the loan and giving interest on those loans, specifically that's the riba itself. So this is a very fundamental issue. That's how it started. Now I believe during the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam,
So,
this exercise, as we see it in the modern world, does not exist. However, the banking system did exist from prior centuries, even before Rasulullah was there. In Egypt, for example, they used to lend and take money out of that. So this entire system was there somewhere. It was used in the past. It's not something new.
And I think even one of the things that the Prophet ﷺ did is stop his uncle who was dealing in riba, in usury.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the concepts maybe in a small scale maybe were practiced at that time, but and then they were developed more to accommodate the needs of today.
Exactly. So now, if you look at the current Islamic system, how does it work? It works based, when I mentioned it's works on contractual basis.
Yes.
So based on the verses of the Quran, it says that you can trade, but you cannot deal with riba,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So these contractual terms are based on trade. This is how they have innovated. The Muslim world, this is how they have innovated. Maybe it does not meet the requirement of the public, but this is how it is. Because at the end of the day, the banks have investors.
Yes.
There are shareholders behind those banks, and those shareholders are expecting a return. So banks doesn't work on charity, that's for sure.
Why
But
do you think the public expect, because it is an Islamic window or an Islamic bank, it should be cheaper than the conventional banking? Why do you think they have this assumption?
this assumption could be there because the Islamic banks are linked to the Islam itself.
Yeah.
So Islam is referred to be a justice thing.
Yes.
Okay. Now, but even today, the scholars who are involved in Islamic banking, they have not confirmed 100% that these current systems are purely Islamic and is the best option available.
Yeah.
None of them, to be fair with them.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, Brother Hatim, these are human intervention. Human have created these systems.
Yes.
So it will lack defaults here and there, probably so on. It's not a perfect system. However, it's a system that is alternative to other systems.
Yes.
Now here I'm not pushing the people to go to conventional banking or to start dealing with Islamic banks. No, not at all. But what I'm saying, what's the harm if there's an alternative?
Yes.
Right? There's an alternative where the others who are feeling these opinions and believes that the conventional banking system is not the right system, they will go with the Islamic banking system. And those who believe those Islamic banking systems are not appropriate or not in a really Islamic shape, they can go back to conventional banking. We're not promoting here, but we're just giving the ideas of the scholars how they believe.
I think also one of the concerns, especially here in Oman, is when they started establishing these Islamic financial institutions or banking or windows, people are concerned that the capital to establish these Islamic windows were actually from the conventional bank. So and the conventional bank makes their money out of riba or usury. So how can it become an Islamic window while the funds or the capital are from the shareholders who are earning in this way.
But to be honest, Brother Hatim, that's a wrong assumption from the first place.
Yes.
When Islamic banking started in Oman, which is where in 2012, and Islamic banking regulation was issued by the central bank, it was very clear that the funding of the Islamic banking window should be generated in a separate funding, meaning the existing shareholders can raise additional capital, purely additional and new capital, and allocate it for this Islamic window.
So they cannot take from their funds.
No, it doesn't work. Yeah,
establish.
not from the retained earnings, for example. It's not from the existing equity of the Islamic or conventional bank.
Yeah.
No, it's exactly. It's to be honest, it is a new generated funding from the existing shareholders.
But the shareholders are the same, right?
They can be the same.
The shareholders can be the same between the conventional bank and
There's no harm in that.
the Islamic bank.
From Sharia perspective, no, there's no harm in that.
Now, what are some of the services that are provided in the Islamic bank? Because I understand the terminologies might not be very common, like murabaha and mudaraba and things like that, to the public. So, can you give us or elaborate a little bit on these services?
Okay. Now, the services in Islamic banks are pretty much the same as it is in a conventional bank, because at the end of the day, this is a bank.
Yes.
And it gives the services, a financial service to the customers. The customers can have their deposits with the Islamic bank on different types, either be it mudaraba. Mudaraba meaning the bank will act as a speculator, where it can invest those funds in its or in other investment types to generate
on your behalf.
On your behalf.
Yes.
On the customer's behalf, yes. And they can open another account like Qard Hasan, as I mentioned, that doesn't generate any return. And they can have also a wakala base, where the bank acts an agency as an agency for the customer to generate an income.
Yes.
So these three types are available currently at the moment. And on the asset side, meaning the bank asset side and the customer's liability side, customers can raise financing. They can purchase houses, they can buy car, can buy goods, and through the financing available options that the Islamic bank has.
What is the requirement for a person to receive such funds? So if they want to buy a house, for example, what is the requirement? Do they have an asset? They should have an asset to back up that loan, or how does it work?
There's two types here. When you talk about the individual, first we'll attack an individual point of view. Individual, first of all, they will have an earning salary, monthly earning salary. That salary has to be routed to that Islamic bank.
Yes.
That will be sort of like a guarantee for the Islamic bank to ensure that those salaries are coming into this customer's account in that bank.
Yes.
And proper deductions are happening on that account and that salary. And let's say they buy a house, that house will be mortgaged by the bank just to ensure the guarantee of the house doesn't lapse away.
Yes.
So bank also want to ensure that there's no risk in this transaction, and it needs to mitigate the risk as much as it can. The main difference here, it brings to a subject where we talked about the mortgage. The mortgage is available also in conventional bank as well. But there are three transactions happening in the mortgage. You have a seller who is selling that house. You have the mortgage, where you need to take it to the house, Ministry of Housing.
Ministry of Housing, yes.
To lien that asset.
Yes.
The third thing is either the loan or the financing. The issue with the scholar is the loan itself. Like when you talk about conventional bank, there's no issue at all with all these transactions except for the loan.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas in Islamic bank, they give it in a different way. They will give it in a mode of financing of murabaha. It can be mode of financing of diminishing musharaka. These are different types of investments that the banks give and finance those customers. What does it mean? Murabaha means the bank buys an asset and sells it to the customer on a fixed amount price.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, let me interrupt you here. When you say the bank buys the property.
Yes.
Normally, what happens is someone applies or shows his interest. I want to buy this certain house,
Right.
and then the bank agrees to finance that,
Right.
and they sign an agreement with the seller.
Right.
They pay him off. But when you go to transfer the deed uh, of the house, you find out that you are transferring from the seller to you.
Right.
The bank is not there in the picture.
Right.
So what happens? How does the bank buy the house from you while there is no transfer of ownership?
Okay. Just before, let me give the confidence to the people how this transaction works, first of all.
Yes.
Now, every Islamic bank or Islamic window will have an SSB members.
What is SSB?
Sharia
Okay,
Supervisory Board,
Okay.
where there'll be 3 to 4 scholars who are available to, to construct these kind of transactions.
Yes.
That's number one. Number two, on these kind of transactions, which you just mentioned, is the Islamic bank will have 3 different agreements. Will have 3 different agreements
Yes.
with the customer. That agreement is the sell the buying agreement from the bank with the agency.
With the meaning the seller.
The main seller.
With the main seller.
There'll be the main seller, where there'll be an agreement between the main seller, the agency,
Yes.
and the bank to sell that particular item.
Yes.
That agreement should be signed with the agency. Number 2 is the agreement between the bank and the customer to sell that land, to sell that particular item. Okay?
Meaning that the bank is selling the property to the customer.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll come on the sequence of that as well.
You mean now you're talking about the second contract,
That
right?
is the second contract.
Yes.
The third contract also assigning the customer as well, to give a wa'ad agreement, where he
What's a wa'ad?
A wa'ad agreement means a fulfillment of the promise. Fulfillment of the promise.
Yes.
They need to, this promise is obliged, or this promise is ensured by the customer.
So what's the difference between the second contract and the third?
Okay. The first contract is to ensure that the bank buys that asset, particular asset, from that agency. So that contract, it's been signed between the vendor, the supplier, and the bank.
But again, Brother Yasser, is that contract legal? Because the authority for transferring an asset from one individual to the other is by the Ministry of Housing, right?
Right.
This is an internal document that is between.
Ministry of Housing is a formality thing that's been done.
Yeah.
Like, let's put it as an example, for example.
Yeah.
When you have a marriage,
Yes.
2 couples are getting married. What happens? You'll have a sheikh, just ensure that marriage happens. There'll be witnesses as well.
He will conduct the
He'll
marriage.
conduct the marriage,
Yes.
right? The marriage is done.
Yes.
We know who's the wife, who's the husband. It's done. But there are certain formalities need to be fulfilled as well. They need
Which is the going to apply for the marriage certificate.
the marriage certificate, exactly. That is a formality, a government formalities. Those are government formalities. However, what Islamic banks believes that contracts have been signed, the moment we sign, the bank, Islamic bank, signs a contract with the agency.
It
on the
belongs
supply,
to the bank.
and signs the contract, and the payment has already happened. Islamic banks will pay directly to that vendor,
Yeah.
and that means that assets already belong to the bank, according to the bank.
Yes.
It's done. Then this sequence is very important. I'll come to that why.
Yeah.
Once this is done, this is the first step. The second step is the bank will sign a contract with the customer where it sells that asset to the customer.
So this is the second
This is the second contract.
contract.
This sequence is very important. At that moment only, that sign with it.
It should be that the first contract is done
Absolutely.
and the transfer of the fund is already done.
It's already done.
Yeah.
The second contract is where the bank will sign it to the customer on the amount to be financed. Meaning, the Islamic bank will, in that contract, will say that this is particular assets has been sold to you by so amount. We have purchases by 5,000 riyals and we are selling it to you by 6,000 riyals.
Yes.
1,000 was our profit,
Which is trade.
which is trade. Trade. And this amount will be deferred for a specific period of time.
Yes.
Let's say 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever it is. What's been agreed. At that moment, customer signs, that means agreement is fulfilled, is done. Okay?
Yes.
Does this profit 1,000 change during this, after this contract? No, it doesn't. Let's say the customer delays his payment.
So
the 1,000 remains 1,000.
For me to understand better, your profit is, let's say, for example, is 1,000. It will not change whether I pay in 10 years or 20 years or I default in my payment?
Not really. See, what happens in Islamic finance, the time value of money is being considered.
Yes.
And it's allowable. There's no harm in that, based on certain scholars. I'm talking about particular scholars who believe in that, because also there's an argument among scholars on this concept.
Yes.
But I'm talking about the scholars who really believe in that, in this system and how it works. So time value is there. Let's say a person who buys an asset for 5 years and the other buys for 10 years, it will have different profits. So Islamic banks will consider the time value of money in these two aspects.
Yes.
Okay? That's the fact, which is there. But what I'm trying to say is, let's say the customer couldn't fulfill his promise and couldn't pay his dues on the agreed term, which is 5 years. The profit, which was agreed by the bank, will not change. The bank cannot charge extra amount of that 1,000 because of time value of money, for example. Why? Because it was already been agreed. However, the customer will be penalized for that.
So there's a clause for penalty.
There's a clause for penalty. And these penalty, the beauty, now here it comes the beauty of Islamic banking. These penalties will not go to the bank's income. It will go to the charity.
Okay, so whatever excess is being given to the charity.
It's not an excess, it's whatever excess amount they're paying,
yes,
because of penalties and so on, it will go for the charity account. And this is really regulated properly in Islamic banks, where the SSB, the Sharia supervisors, will regulate, and also central bank will regulate, to ensure exactly how much of these penalties has been going to the charity, and which charity organization are benefiting from this. So Islamic Bank also plays a big role in benefiting the
community
society,
service also.
community service as well. So this shows what's the difference between them.
And I think now it's very, very clear that the type of contracts does matter. How the transaction, from the outside it might look the same, but the details, when you explained it, it makes it very, very obvious and very clear how the concepts are set and how the agreements are done and the time frame of each agreement. So you can see the reflection of the Islamic rulings in the process that you have mentioned. So before we close today's session, Brother Yasser, what are some of the common questions that the bank get from the customers? Because the Islamic banking industry is relatively new to the community.
Right.
So you might have questions from the customers, you might have questions from the staff themselves, because they're not very familiar with the Islamic banking system. So can you share some of
the common question that we get is, as we discussed today, what's the difference between the conventional bank and Islamic banks? Because at the end, the result seems to be the same in most of the cases. And we try to educate the people about it. And as I mentioned, it's not, I'm not enforcing my opinion or anyone's opinion here, but I'm trying to explain that these are alternatives.
Yes.
And banks was always considered to be innovative, and they will come up with different ideas, to gain the customers, to gain the shareholders' return, and so on. And Islamic bankers and Islamic, economists believes that this system is really functioning well. However, I don't believe there is so far I haven't seen, at least, it's not like I don't believe, I haven't seen Islamic economy as such which is in practice. We only read that in theories. But however, let's take it in this way. What I would say is, when I tell it to the people, this is an alternative which is available,
Yes.
and anyone has the option to use it if it's required or not.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much, Brother Yasser
Jazakallah.
Al-Maawali. It has been a fruitful discussion, even for me personally, to understand it better.
Thank
And I hope also our viewers and listeners have benefited from today's session. I hope this is not the last time we meet.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you very much for your efforts, and see you soon, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, brother.
Dear brothers and sisters, thank you for tuning in on Dome Podcast. I'm your host, Hatim Al-Abdissalaam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.